So, hello everybody. This is my first ever YouTube video, so let's see how this goes. The reason I decided to make this is a good friend of mine, actually. Finally convinced me that I really should make a YouTube channel about the sort of work I do on chainsaws. This saw right here is actually the main reason I got into it. Not only is this the first chainsaw I've ever made a YouTube video on, it's the first chainsaw I ever boarded, and it's the chainsaw that got me into doing this sort of work. So yeah, if you can see right there, it's marked as a Stihl 038 AV Super. Very long story short, it's no longer an 038 AV Super. It's a mix of several different saws actually at this point. So, out of the way. So, first thing everyone notices is air filter. This, just standard uni, 1.5" ID air filter, pod air filter. Can get them anywhere. My local Stihl dealership it's part of a John Deere dealership. They are John Deere dealers at heart, so they don't always have the best knowledge or stock of Stihl parts. I was unable to get a Stihl 038 air filter for this saw, so I decided, why not get one of these, a very, very common air filter, and 3D print my own block. Later this week, I will try and make a video, explain my detail on how I came to this filter and this block design. I did all the designing in-house. I did it all myself. I had some inspiration based off of Redbeard Saws, next to Stokel on Instagram. Very, very good person, very knowledgeable. He helped me a little bit with this design. But yeah, so, Stihl 038. I call it my Frankenstein saw because that's what it's turned into. So, let's start off by saying I'm running 8-pin sprocket. Pretty common. It's very torquey saw, even stock, as an 038 Super. The 038 Super, in my opinion, is the best version of the Stihl 038. I know a lot of people prefer the 038 AV Mag 2, but I've ran them. I find they're not a great balance of saw. They're a very, very particular saw about how they're ran, stock at least. So this side, this is a crankcase half off of a Stihl 038 AV, not the Super. This side, the flywheel side, that is stock 038 AV Super to the top cover. You might ask yourself, well, why would you do that? I did that because it's hard to make out, but the mounting bracket for the dog actually broke off before I got the saw. I got the saw for a very, very good price from a very close friend, and when I got it, the saw was worth scrap price. It was broken. It had not ran in, at the time, about 20 years, and I pulled it out from underneath a barn. No, I don't mean inside. Yes, I truly mean underneath. It was a very old barn that had collapsed, and they forgot the saw was in there. I found it, and they gave it to me. Again, very good family friends. So that's why I swapped the crankshaft halves, or crankcase halves, rather. My bad, I apologize. To do that, so anyone who's worked on saws, right there, there are locating pins. On this saw, 038 Supers, the PTO side has recesses, the flywheel side has the actual pins. On an 038 AV, the PTO side, which was this side, had the pins, and the flywheel side did not. So I had to pull the pins out of it, which it's a fairly simple process, but it does take some time. You have to be very careful because you don't want to scratch up the bores. And I had to polish the pins to make sure everything fit correctly. At that point, I got the crankcases back together, new bearings, new seals, all that fun stuff. And then from there, I went on to the top end. The top end on this is an 038 AV Magnum 2 top end. Cylinder only, I should say. People who know about the 038 know the 038 AV Super, which this was based off of, and the 038 AV Standard. Those are 66 and 68 cc displacements. Very standard. The AV Magnum 2 is a 72 cc. The AV Magnum 1 was also 72 cc's, but these AV Mag 2 top ends are a lot more common nowadays, which that's what this is. So, a big thing with that is the AV Super and AV Magnum do not share the same bolt pattern. You have to modify the cylinder base, and I did do a little bit of work to the crankcases, which, if there's any interest at all, I will happily go into a video detailing the sort of work. I don't know if you can see it, but that I had to actually machine out. I had to drop the base a little bit. I had to, on the cylinder, I had to drop it. I had to re-drill the holes to a different size. I had to do a lot of work, in all honesty. Was it worth it? 100%. This is one of my favorite saws to run. Stock, it was my favorite saw to run, but it just got so worn out that it needed a lot of work. And while I was in there, I decided, hey, why not go all the way? You might have also noticed I said the top end, but cylinder was 038 Magnum. That's because it has an 046 piston. The 046 and 038 AV Magnum both have a 52mm bore. The 046 pistons, however, have a slightly longer skirt, are slightly taller, and the pin heights are slightly different. I don't believe I have both, but here is an 046 piston. So, by pin height, I mean this pin is slightly lower on this. The 038, it's about 20 thousandths, if I remember, taller than this one, which means it increases compression slightly and affects your exhaust timing. Which, if you were to drop that into a stock saw, that exhaust timing would make a slight difference, but where I poured it, it doesn't. The biggest issue is the skirt is significantly longer. It was about 150 to 175 thousandths of an inch longer, which anyone who knows a lot about pouring means that's a lot of degrees, and that's a very short intake duration now, which meant I had to drop the intake by a lot. Thankfully, I didn't run into any issues doing that, and the saw runs extremely well. Soon this week, hopefully, if I had to guess Saturday, I might have a chance to get this saw out and get it running for you guys. It has its issues. It's an older saw. I don't run it much anymore. I have an 046, which you guys saw the short I posted about. That video is hopefully coming out on Monday of next week, if I have the time. But this is the saw that started it all for me. It's a great saw. They're heavy. I put a pipe on it. This is a temporary pipe. I had a much nicer pipe for it that I gave to a friend who also has an 038 because he wanted to try one. So this is just a placeholder. If you notice, can't even use the chain brake nowadays. So it's part of the reason this saw hasn't been ran much. Another big issue is with this, the 3D printed block and this filter, there is no way to actually use the choke because this doesn't have a choke plate in the carburetor itself. It's within the air filter housing, which means when I start, I have to get a squirt ball of fuel, put the saw up, give it a little shot of fuel, and it would appear I ran this out of fuel the last time I used it, so that's kind of embarrassing, but such is life. That's what you have to do to get it running, though, is just in the morning, spray a little fuel down the throat of the carburetor. Again, easy as just doing that, and really easily. It's a great saw. Adjustable oiler. The only thing I really wish it had was it has a front-mounted chain tensioner. I really wish it was a side-mounted one so I could access it actually through the clutch cover, through this. This is just a cheap, generic, oversized clutch cover I got off eBay, I believe. If I remember to, I will get the link for you guys. Same thing with these dogs. These dogs were actually made by an American company on eBay. I live in America. I want to support American-made products as much as I can. I do actually really like them. They work well. They're big enough to dig into big trees. I know I'm in the Northeast, but I still managed to find myself getting called 28, 30. Last tree job I was in some trees that averaged about 36 inches in diameter, and there was one that was about 48. So having the oversized dogs for trees like that are very nice. They do have their drawbacks, but that's a topic for another day, unfortunately. I don't have the time to get into it now. But the saw, it's really the saw that got me into chainsaws. I've ran many other saws before this, but the saw needed work. I put the work in, I got running stock, and since then I've just been continuing to run it. It's been nothing but reliable for me. They're not the easiest saw to support. They are a very short stroke compared to a 044 or 046. That's one of the main drawbacks. They're heavy. This saw, I want to say, is about 2 pounds heavier than an 044. It might even be more. Meaning, even with a lightweight bar, this is still a very heavy saw to run all day. But, again, it's reliable. It starts easily. It runs. It idles. And it cuts. It cuts very well. If you have one of these, and it's stock, 038, 038 AV Super, 038 Magnum, any of them. The only thing I'd say is maybe get an air filter set up like this. If you're local or near me, those of you who are friends of mine, the guy who wanted me to make this video is getting an 038, and you know who you are. If you want an air filter like this, I will happily get you one. They're easy enough to make. I will hopefully make a video next week about my thoughts, process, everything about how I make one. This one actually 3D printed at school years ago. Had to do some 3D printing projects and managed to get this one printed out at school. That's why it's red and black, because 2 different printers running 2 different filaments. It's not even PLA plus. It's the cheapest, most generic plastic you can get, but it's lasted me very well. It's crushed in a little over time, but it's plastic. And if I want to, I could 3D print one in about 20 minutes for about 10 cents in plastic. It's not a big deal. They're very easy to make. All you need to know is your venturi size for the carburetor and what the bolt pattern is for bolting up the carburetor. Saws like this, I could redesign this in minutes without exaggeration. And if there is any interest in it, I will happily go in depth, show my entire process. I still have all the files. I have first draft, second draft, all the way to this. And I have a few that are unfinished prototypes, I guess. ones where I tried to incorporate a choke lever in, ones where I tried to shorten this, but they all run well. This one, it's been on this saw for 3 years now, and one of those years, this saw ran 5 days a week, about 6 hours a day, and I put just hundreds of gallons of gas and oil through it, and this saw just remained reliable. That's why I love it. If I didn't have the 046 I was given, I'd still be running this day in and day out, and I still run this a lot. It's cool. If there's any interest in the conversion process from 038 Super or 038 to 038 Magnum, it's a relatively easy process. There's a few tricks I've learned after doing this saw and a couple for other friends of mine, but it's pretty easy to do, and it's very rewarding. These saws might be heavy, they might be old, but they still cut, and I still love them. That's all for me today, folks. Thank you.